Welcome, welcome, welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 561 of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. Here at the Unpopular Podcast, now we ask you to agree with me and ask you to hear me out. So the Super Bowl happened, and I'm going to do something that you're not supposed to do. I'm going to start this episode off in a way that you're not really supposed to start episodes. You're not really supposed to start talking about a topic as large and as grand as the Super Bowl. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start off talking about the losing team. And hear me out. I have to start with the losing team in order to give proper praise to the winning team. Let me first say congratulations to the Seattle Seahawks for winning this year's Super Bowl against the New England Patriots 29-13. So bear with me as I start this episode unconventionally. Not all magical roads end magically. Not all roads that you can say are magical end in the way that you think they're supposed to. When you look at this New England Patriots team, everything about this road was magical. Everything about how the New England Patriots made it to the Super Bowl was even representing the AFC in the Super Bowl was magical. From the fact that they had arguably one of the best regular seasons that you can have. First team in NFL history to go undefeated on the road. They had an MVP candidate in Drake May who finished second. They bolstered one of the best defenses in football. And even if you look at just their road to the Super Bowl in the playoffs, they had to play against almost every single top defense in the league, or at least in the playoffs. Nothing about this road spelled New England Patriots representing the AFC in the Super Bowl. Now, this is why I wanted to start with them. Because while it was a magical road to get from New England to the Super Bowl, bettors, fans, analysts had to do some extra squinting of the eyes to justify picking the New England Patriots beating the Seattle Seahawks in the Super Bowl. Because while the road was magical, it was unlikely and improbable that the New England Patriots were going to beat the Seattle Seahawks in the Super Bowl. Because again, I know I'm not supposed to do this, but we're starting off with this magical run. One thing that has been said, and one thing that I've said several times in this podcast is everything lined up perfectly for the New England Patriots, not just to have a good regular season, but to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. Now, I can't stress this enough. I'm not just calling them. I'm not just saying that the New England Patriots are a product of their schedule. I think that would be disingenuous to the Patriots. I think that would be unfair to the Patriots. Because you can have the easiest schedule of all time, but if you don't capitalize on that easy schedule, then it doesn't matter. It's an opportunity blown. It's been well documented that the New England Patriots had the easiest schedule in the last 20 years. But if you don't capitalize on those, mind you, we're also talking about a team that I think finished with 4 wins just the year before. So they had a last place schedule and they capitalized. So for that, and I know it's going to sound kind of shady, but it's not. For that, I have to congratulate the New England Patriots because, again, they did something that they had to beat who was in front of them. You can have an easy schedule, and we've seen teams that have easy schedules that don't necessarily capitalize on that. But when you have an easy schedule and you capitalize, shout out to the Patriots, shout out to Mike Vrabel, and then you get to the playoffs, and on paper, your road is daunting. Going against the Chargers with Justin Herbert, with Jim Harbaugh, with that defense. Then you go up against the New England Patriots with, I mean, not New England Patriots, I'm sorry, with then the Houston Texans with that defense, undoubtedly the best defense in football. Then you go up against the Denver Broncos in Denver, a team that you have not beat in the playoffs. With that defense, top three defense for sure. The road is daunting, but this is why we talk about magical. And this is why we say, while things are magical, yes, you have to capitalize on that magic. You go up against the Chargers that are out there, two left tackles, arguably the most important position in football outside of the quarterback. And one thing that has not been talked about a lot is how good the New England Patriots defense is. That's something that I'm not going to poo-poo about. But you go up against the Chargers without their two top left tackles. You win. And I think it was 16-3. Then you go up against the Houston Texans, and albeit the Texans played incredible defensively, the Texans had arguably their best defensive game of the year. Yet, you played against an offense and a quarterback in C.J. Stroud who just wasn't ready for the moment. And give it credit, the New England Patriots defense came to play. Forced about, 5 turnovers? It could have been 7, 8, or 9. You beat the Houston Texans. Then you go into Denver, and you're playing against the vaunted Denver Broncos. However, you're doing it with a backup quarterback who has not thrown an NFL pass in almost 2 years because the starting quarterback got hurt the game before. You beat them to make it to the Super Bowl. See, I feel like the way that I'm talking about this, the way that I'm painting it, I'm saying that it's only luck that has gotten the Patriots, or that got the Patriots to the Super Bowl. And I'm not you get opportunities sometimes that other teams don't. Sometimes, and I talked about this before, you have to have a little bit of luck to say that you can even represent your division or represent your conference in a Super Bowl. You need a little bit of luck just to be champions. And the Patriots had a lot of it. And to their credit, they capitalized on it. Because again, they could have lost to Justin Herbert. They could have lost to C.J. Stroud. They could have lost to Jarrett Stidham in that Denver defense. But they were able to win. So shout out to them for that. But let me take it back to the Super Bowl, and let me now center in on the Super Bowl. And I promise you, I'm going to give the Seattle Seahawks their credit. But I can't talk about the Seattle Seahawks without talking about the New England Patriots. And follow me. I said you had to squint really hard to convince yourself that the New England Patriots were going to beat the Seattle Seahawks. because I said this last episode when I did my prediction, but I understand that the game is not played on paper. But if you look on paper, there was nothing about this game that felt uh, balanced. There was nothing about this game that should have told you going into it that, oh, the Patriots have a shot. Because even if you look at the games ahead, the Patriots did not look like that team of luck. Or they looked more like the team of luck than they did the team that was supposed to be there. Because they while their defense played great, their offense was horrible. Every single game leading up to the Super Bowl in the playoffs. Their offense was horrible against. Now you can chalk it up to their playing good defense, but their offense was horrible against the Chargers. Their offense was horrible against the Texans. Their offense was horrible against the Broncos. Drake May just didn't look comfortable. He didn't look like he was having a good time ever in the playoffs. So when you look and you say, okay, well, momentum is on the Seattle Seahawks side, roster is on the Seattle Seahawks side. You can argue coaching is on the Piss or New England Patriots side, but that's a toss up because McDaniel is really good. I don't know. The Seattle Seahawks are playing the best all around game or all around, yeah, the best game, the best they've been playing all season right now when the New England Patriots are not. And then you get to the Super Bowl. And exactly what I thought was going to happen is what happened. That luck, that magic, unfortunately ran out. And shout out to the New England Patriots because, again, there was a lot of breaks that were given to them, but they capitalized on it. And that's something that I cannot stress enough. You capitalize on it. You want to know how there was a lot of breaks? And I look at Drake May, who finished second in MVP. Albeit he should have finished second in MVP. I feel like he had a great season. But looking at the entire season now that the Super Bowl is over, did you know that even if you add the Super Bowl, did you know that Drake May only threw for 300 or more yards once this season? Once. If I'm not mistaken, I think that only one, maybe two. I don't think they had. In fact, I'm gonna look that up right now. If I'm not mistaken, I do not believe they had more than two. Yeah, they only had 1,000 yard receiver, and that was Stephon Diggs, and he was at 1,013. This, and now that I'm actually sitting here thinking about it, how many rushing yards? Ramondre Stevenson had 603 rushing yards, and Travion Henderson had 911. To put that into a little bit of perspective, Derrick Henry had 1,592, or 1,595, which is second. On paper, this team wasn't that good. But the game's not played on paper, which then brings me now to the Seattle Seahawks. Because on paper, The Seattle Seahawks were a great team. When you go into the season with Kenneth Walker, with Cooper Kupp, with Jackson Smith and Jigba, with AJ Barner, then with Byron Murphy, Everett Jones, Devin Witherspoon, Nick Emmanuel, Reek Woolen, Julian Love, Marcus Lawrence, Leonard Williams. When you go into a season that loaded at that loaded, in fact, when you go into a season that loaded, the only question that they had was about the quarterback. Because we've seen Sam Darnold at his highest and we've seen him at his lowest, and it is not necessarily close. But I said it. Now I was wrong, but I said it. I said that the NFC West was going to be run by the Rams. I said it was the Rams division to lose. However, if they were going to lose to a opponent in that division, don't look don't look too far from Seattle, because what they're building there was phenomenal. And you saw it all season. Unlike the New England Patriots, Seattle had a tougher road to the play, or tougher regular season schedule. They had a somewhat unproven quarterback, and I have to say something. Sam Darnold didn't have the greatest of seasons. Sam Darnold was a high turnover quarterback this year, but he was big when he needed to be. He was big in big moments. And those turnovers usually didn't come in those big moments. But we talk about dark horses a lot, and a lot of people, including myself, had the Seattle Seahawks on that dark horse list. Obviously, when you see that you're going to go with the top tier quarterback driven heavy or quarterback heavy teams. Like, obviously, most people like myself pick the Ravens or the Bills or the Chiefs, or a lot of people lied to themselves thinking that the Bengals were going to be back, or the Eagles. Those teams that have proven themselves, those teams that have top tier quarterbacks. But what Seattle was building was something at least sustainable for an entire year. And it manifested itself into winning their franchise's second Super Bowl. Incredible defense. I was incredible offense. I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba won Offensive Player of the Year. We don't talk about balance enough. We don't talk about how important balance truly is to winning. That's why, actually, I feel like you had to squint a lot harder to think that the Patriots were going to win the Super Bowl, because an unbalanced team was going up against arguably the most balanced team in football. The New England Patriots, their offense hadn't been good, if we're gonna shrink the sample size, the entire playoffs. While the Seahawks, their offense was stout, and then their defense was incredible. There were games, for instance, the NFC Championship, Seattle Seahawks against the Rams. That game was that game was won equally on the offensive side than it was the defensive side. Matthew Stafford threw for like 390, yet and still, when they needed to make a big stop, they did. And then Sam Darnold, he was able to slice and dice, and Kenneth Walker the third. Mind you, remember the Seahawks are without their top tier second option at the running back position in Zach Charbonnet. But when you go into the Super Bowl, and when we talk about the Super Bowl, it was the 29-13 doesn't paint the clear enough picture for how the Super Bowl really was. The Seahawks dominated the Super Bowl. The stats don't necessarily tell the whole story. Drake May threw for more yards than Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold had 200. Drake May had 295. However, Drake May did finish with the second worst. Listen to me. Drake May finished with the second worst QBR in NFL history for a Super Bowl. Second. He had 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, one of which being a pick six, and he was sacked 6 times for 43 yards. QBR of 16.3, second worst all time in the Super Bowl. It was complete domination. They could do absolutely nothing. This kind of now the score doesn't reflect that, but it I said it. It kind of felt like the Seahawks going up against the Broncos a few years ago when the Seahawks won their first Super Bowl and they just blitzed. I think Michael Smith won the Super Bowl MVP. They just blitzed the Broncos. That's kind of how it felt here. Drake May could do nothing. Their offense could do nothing. Drake May was their leading rusher with 37 yards, and Mac Hollins was their leading receiver with 78 yards. They could do nothing. Seattle's defense carried them this Super Bowl. Now, shout out to Kenneth Walker III for becoming the first running back since I don't remember who it was right now, but becoming the first running back, I think since '09. I think maybe since Terrell Davis. I could be wrong, but he was the first running back in years to win Super Bowl MVP. And I'm not saying this to take anything away from him because he was incredible. 27 carries for 135 yards is something. But if you could really award the MVP to if the MVP didn't have to go to a person, it can go to a unit. This entire defense was the MVP. The Seattle Seahawks entire defense was the MVP for this game. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. The game was not as close as 29-13. It wasn't. And that's what happens when you build the right way. That's what happens when you build a championship culture, not just build a good roster. And that's what happens where when you build championship habits throughout the season. That's what happens when you've been tested throughout the season. To be completely honest with you, I know it was a close game or they were close games, but I knew this Patriots were probably going to make the Super Bowl after they beat the Texans because you're going against Jared Stidham. But I knew that if the Patriots were going to win the Super Bowl, it would have to be on the back. Seattle had to have, and that's what a lot of people were saying. Sam Darnold would have had to start seeing ghosts again. Which brings me to Sam Darnold. He was it. He was the only question mark we thought going into the Super Bowl. If we're being completely honest, he was the only question mark that we had going into this season when we talk about this Seattle team. Because roster wise is loaded, defensively wise is loaded, coaching wise is loaded. It was just him. And I think there's something to be said, obviously, with uh, never giving up and never quitting on yourself or perseverance through tough times. There's something to be said about that. However, there's also something to be said about knowing yourself and knowing your strengths versus your weaknesses. You see, to win a Super Bowl and your best wide receiver had 4 catches for 27 yards, and I mean best wide receiver of the season because Cooper Kupp had the best game as a receiver with 6 receptions for 61 yards, but still, there's so many storylines attached to this. Jackson Smith and Jigba, Cooper Kupp, he was essentially counted out and discarded from the LA Rams because they picked Puka Nakua over him, which anyone would do that 10 times out of 10. Sam Darnold, JJ McCarthy was picked over him. I don't know if most people would do that, but every question that, in fact, now that I'm sitting here really listening to myself say it, the only question that we had about the Seattle Seahawks answered itself in a royal way, and that was, will Sam Darnold be able to take this team to heights it hasn't seen all but once? And as we saw, alongside a stout defense, alongside some incredible. Um, that also shows just look how important the trade deadline is. They got Rashid Shaheed at the trade deadline from the Saints. You see how large pause. Well, you see how important he's been to this team, especially in the playoffs, and especially with his punt and kick return ability, his speed. This was an organizational win. The organization from the top down was A+ all season. If you're feeling like I'm glazing the Seattle Seahawks, that's you should. They're Super Bowl champs, the second Super Bowl in franchise history. And to be completely honest, I sat back and looked. Obviously, with the state of the league, things are differently, but I looked. I don't think there was a team. How it was currently constructed at the end of the season, I don't think there was a team in the AFC that could have stood a chance against the Seattle Seahawks. Now, things would be different if everyone was perfectly healthy, but they weren't. There's not a team in this league that I think, or there's not a team in the AFC that I think could have stood a chance against the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. That's just how good they were playing. That's how good Sam Darnold was. That's how good Jackson Smith and Jigba was. That's how good Cooper Kupp was. That's how good that defense was. You know what's one of the last things I'll say? You know what's crazy about the Super Bowl too? After all the praise I just heaped, the best player in the Super Bowl was on the Patriots. Christian Gonzalez was the best player by far in the Super Bowl. He's the reason why Jackson Smith and Jigba had 4 receptions for 27 yards. They threw the ball. They threw him the ball 10 times. They didn't lack for trying. And one thing that they say about corners is the reason why you're a corner is because you can't catch the ball. Because if you could catch the ball, you'd be a receiver. There were at least two plays I can think where Christian Gonzalez should have caught the ball or should have caught an interception. But he did have a breakup. He was that one pass that would have for sure been a either I'm not gonna say touchdown, but it would have been a big play when Sam Darnold launched the ball to Rashid Shaheed, and out of nowhere, Christian Gonzalez gets his, I believe, his right hand up just in time to slap the ball away. Or Jackson Smith and Jigba would have had 2 touchdowns if it wasn't for Christian Gonzalez. As great as the Seahawks were, the best player in the game was Christian Gonzalez. And that shows you how important, you know, the whole team aspect is because it didn't matter. Congratulations to the Seattle Seahawks. And I'm not saying that, they're instantly going to repeat or, uh, we're not going to go that far. We're going to bask in the moment that they are now this year's Super Bowl champion. However, what I will say is this is what a championship caliber program looks like. This is what happens when you build smartly. Obviously, you're going to have to see what happens in free agency, but as currently constructed, the Seattle Seahawks, they will be a problem next year. But for right now, congratulations to the Seahawks for beating the New England Patriots in this year's Super Bowl. This episode, I don't think is going to be long. But when you start to hear the word best, when you start to hear the word greatest, people's antennas start going up. A lot of times it's because it kind of questions what you've watched already. Or it puts into consideration, okay, what I've watched is that grand, but you're saying that this is the best. Let me focus. What you're hearing is when you look at college basketball and you look at the NBA draft coming up, well, not coming up, but the NBA draft that we're going to see, obviously at the end of the season, you're hearing that this could very possibly be the best draft class we've ever seen. That's I'm not going to say consensus, but that's what we're hearing a lot. Now, they're saying that this draft class, the 2026 draft class, can rival that of the 2003 draft that obviously saw LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, that draft. Or I believe it was 1996 that saw Kobe Bryant and Steve Nash, those drafts. And I'm not going to go as far as to say this is going to be the best draft. I'm not going to say that. Cuz I don't think there's anybody in this draft that's going to match the production of a Kobe Bryant or of a Allen Iverson or of a LeBron James or D Wade or even Carmelo. So I think that, 2006 or no, 2003 and 96, I think that they are in their own battle as best because of what the talent that was. Or you can even go, what was it, 90 or 80, 86, I believe, that had Jordan and Hakeem Olajuwon and Charles Barkley and all. Those three are kind of rivaling themselves. But what I will say is this, and this is a product of sports today. I feel like this draft could very possibly be the deepest and most NBA ready draft we've ever seen. And what I mean by that is when you look at the landscape of college basketball, there are so many players, freshmen, that are NBA ready. In fact, the first one, two, three, four, six, seven, eight. I think 7 out of the first 10, when you look at mock drafts, 7 out of the first 10 draft picks are freshmen. From AJ DeBansa to Cam Boozer, Darren Peterson, Caleb Williams, Kingston Flemings. This is a deep draft. A homie from Arizona, the point guard from Arizona. I feel like the top end of the draft is, or when you go down and you look at this entire draft, it is deep. There's people that you can get in the late first round to second round that can be game changers. That's not something that you usually see in the draft. So while I don't think that, especially if you look at the top end, it's the best, I do think that this could be the deepest draft and the most NBA ready because a lot of times, usually the top 5 to 6 are the only ones that are legit NBA ready, or they can go to an NBA team and be ready day one. They can go to an NBA team, and out of that 5 or 6, maybe 2 or 3 of them can go to an NBA team and change the fortune of a team day one. I think that there's a couple people in this draft. I think that usually that's pretty much um pretty much afforded and allotted to like 1 or 2 players. Like there's not too many. You can't name too many players that was in the Wimby draft. You can't name too many players that was in the Cade Cunningham draft. You can't name too many players that was in the Zion Williamson draft that actually produced. So I do think that when you look, no, AJ DeBancer right now is him and Cam Boozer are kind of jockeying for position as far as who is going to be number one, number two, and then Darren Peterson's in there as well. I feel that obviously those players, especially AJ, those can be day one player or game change or franchise changing players. I'm still questioning Cam Boozer because he still has a old. While he shoots okay from the three, he still has more of a back to the basket, dominating the paint. I don't know how that's gonna fare in the league, but I mean, I think he leads college basketball in scoring at like 23, 24 points a game. Um, Depending on who you ask, a lot of people have Darren Peterson number one from Kansas. The only issue with him is he can't stay healthy. Bro, the man missed a game, I think against Arizona, who was the number one team at the time. He missed a game for flu-like symptoms, and they like pulled him 10 minutes before the game. The man just can't stay healthy, which would be a cause of concern for me. But if you just look at his talent, but I'm not gonna go as far as to say the best. But I do think that this has, and listening to me say it, it does question, I guess, what I value and what you do or don't value. Because listening to me say it, how could this not be the best if I also say that it has the potential to be the deepest? Because we're talking about the sheer amount of talent that is in this draft is almost unparalleled. I can't name too many drafts where you look at the 30th pick for the Wizards and think, well, Dylan Swan, he's really good. Or Tyler Turner at the 29th pick, or Josh Jefferson from Iowa State at the 25th pick. Like, or if you go to the Christian Anderson from Texas Tech at the 18th pick, or Thomas Hugh from Florida at the 16th pick, or Golden State getting Chris Siak from Houston. Like, maybe if I word it differently, I don't. It could be the best as far as deepest draft. I just don't think that as great as AJ DeBanca, as great as Cam Boozer, as great as Darren Peterson, as great as Caleb Williams are and can be, I don't think that they'll be on the level of a LeBron or D Wade or Melo or Kobe, Allen Iverson, stuff like that, or people like that. But yeah, maybe because I do. While the top talent, I don't know if it's going to be uh, as talented at the top, but this is shaping to be arguably the deepest draft that we've seen in a while. I kind of want to stay on that for a second, sort of. I want to talk about North Carolina for a second because everyone that watches this, they know that that is my team. I rep hard for North Carolina. Hell, Caleb Wilson is projected to be the fourth overall pick in a bunch of mock drafts from the power forward from North Carolina. I can't talk about building regular season habits in the NBA, in the NFL, in any sport that has a regular season and a playoffs. I can't talk about regular season habits and then sit here and look you guys in your face and say North Carolina is a championship caliber team. And you're probably thinking to yourself, Jay, wait, whoa. This is the same North Carolina that just beat Duke at home at the buzzer. Shout out to Seth Trimble. And you guys know that I'm a diehard North Carolina fan. But there's this saying in sports, it's called stacking wins. Stacking wins is how many wins in a row can you get? How many easy wins can you get? How many wins can you get where it just looks easy? Where you're projected to win and you do it. How many times can you do that? Because there's going to be adversity. There's going to be times when you may lose a game that you're not supposed to lose, or you go up against a top opponent and you don't win. But you stack so many wins, it's like okay, you're good. What stacking wins also does is it builds consistency. It builds uniformity. It builds um, habits, winning habits. And North Carolina is one of the few teams, and don't get me wrong, Miami is a good team. But North Carolina is one of the few teams that could win against Duke. And 2 days later, 3 days later, you lose to Miami. Now, again, Miami's a good team. Don't get me wrong. But the Achilles heel for North Carolina all season has been their defense. They cannot stop the three to save their life. They are an absolute horrendous 3-point shooting team. And you know what the issue is? If we bring it to a micro level, playing against Miami, you know what actually the biggest issue is they're inconsistent because they had their best defensive performance, at least game plan and schematics wise, against Duke 3 days ago. They beat Duke defensively, honestly, even though they did shoot like 75% second half. But their Achilles heel has been their defense all year. Yo, Miami shot the ball 47%, damn near 80% in the field, in the paint. I don't like bringing negative lights to African American coaches because I know how difficult it can be. It's a little easier in basketball than football, but still. This has been my my concern about Hubert Davis. Hubert Davis is an incredible coach. Well, Hubert Davis hasn't really proven. You go on that magical run to the national championship, which you do lose to Kansas, but since then you've had the number one overall seed. You had Baycott, you had R.J. Davis, but what has that gotten you? Nothing. And then now you have this is probably the one team where you have to coach up, like 'cause this is a young team. North Ca- Yo, from Caleb Wilson to Derek Dixon, this is a team that you have to coach. And right now you're 19-5 and 7-4 in the ACC play. And obviously, when you look at the length and you look at they could beat anybody, but they could also lose to anybody, clearly, especially a team that is hot from the three. Yo, I don't remember. Yeah, I do. It was Stanford. Stanford, man, St- Stanford just, man. And then they lost to Cal, man. Yeah. I'm not throwing away the season, but I just think that um I don't think they're going to be a bubble team or anything, but it'll be hard pressed for me to be confident in this team because they haven't really shown the ability or they haven't shown that they can stack those easy wins. Like I know they went on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 game win streak. Yeah. And they beat people like Kentucky. They beat people like Ohio State by 1. They beat Florida State, but then you lose to SMU by 14. You lose to Stanford by 5. You lose to Cal by 6. You do beat Virginia. You do beat Duke, but then you lose to Miami. It's like there's where's the consistency, bro? You're beating people like SC Upstate. You know, even though he did beat Kansas. Shout out to them. So we'll see, man. We'll see. There's still you still got NC State at NC State. You still got Louisville. You still got Clemson and Duke again. So we'll see. This could maybe I'm just in the moment because I just watched them lose to to Miami the worst way possible. Their defense was their turnovers were horrible. Maybe I'm just emotional. Who knows? But we'll see. Lastly, before we go, when I listen to a lot of you guys talk, it becomes more and more apparent that you guys, a lot of people, not everyone, a lot of people not only played sports or not was important in sports, but doesn't understand a athlete's mentality. They don't understand how an athlete's mentality is much different than anybody's mentality that they've probably run across. I think about how Tyrese Halliburton. And if you even want to go back further, I think about Kevin Durant. And I think about the conversations that came after obviously he ruptured his Achilles, which also came after um him hurting his hamstring and being out for a long period of time. And a lot of people were saying, well, he should have never suited up. And if he wouldn't have suited up in the NBA finals, then, you know, he might his career might have been better. He might, it's that type of conversation. Or you hear Tyrese Halliburton. Tyrese Halliburton should have never came back in the NBA finals because, now he'd be playing this season. And this conversation, and the reason why I wanted to bring this today is because of Lindsey Vonn, who, a couple days ago ruptured her Achilles or meniscus, something like that. She was not supposed to be skiing. I think it was her. I think she ruptured her ACL or ruptured her. It was 100% rupture, is what she said. Her Achilles, I believe, or her ACL, one of them two. And she goes and still competes. Now, she competed. She fell. I think shattered her knee, and she's done for. But a lot of people are questioning why she would go out there. A lot of people question why an athlete like Tyrese Halliburton would go out in the NBA finals and risk further injury, which obviously we saw him further get hurt. Or how someone like Terrell Owens can play in the Super Bowl with a broken leg, screws in his leg. I wasn't, I'm not going to sit here and say that I was the greatest athlete. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to sit here and say that I was the focal point for a championship caliber team. I wasn't. I'm not going to sit here and say that I was the best player on my high school or college basketball team. I'm not going to say that because I would be lying to you guys. But I do understand the mentality of giving it all you got. Because one thing that we say all the time, and obviously we say it when things don't happen, but we say, yo, you never know when you're going to get back to this place. You never know if this is the last time. Tyrese Halliburton was in the NBA Finals. When was the last time the Pacers were in the NBA Finals? Terrell Owens was in the Super Bowl. Kevin Durant was in the NBA Finals. on the cusp of history. Because if you don't remember, Golden State was they were trying to three-peat, something that we have not seen in the league since the Lakers and Kobe and Shaq. Maybe if it was a regular season game, I understand. It probably wouldn't have gone out there. I'm sure if Lindsey Vonn was younger and she already did, because she came out and said that this is probably her last go around. In fact, how? She's 41. I believe she came out and said that she it was her last Olympics. So with that in mind, you know good and goddamn well, ain't if there is a sliver of hope that she could play, if there's a sliver of a chance that she could play or compete, she was gonna do it. I think that the expectation shifted for her in the sense of, wow, there was probably a small part of her that thought that she still had a chance to win. I think that it shifted as to, okay, well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to win with a was it Achilles or ACL with an ACL tear. I just think I want to compete. I don't want my last um, Olympics to be dictated by an injury. Obviously, that's what happened at the end of the day, but she went out there and tried. Tyrese Halliburton looked at it and said, "Yo, I don't know how many times we're gonna get this. Is the NBA Finals. People dream about this. There are great Hall of Fame players that have never been to the NBA Finals. There are players that have only been once and never been back. Tyrese Halliburton is going to give it all he got. Kevin Durant looking like, yo, I'm one of our best players, probably the first or second best player on the team. They need me. We're about to three-peat. We could win a championship. Damn, she fractured her tibia. Damn. But yeah, man, that's what an athlete would do. Any athlete would do that. That's just the competitive nature in an athlete, you know. I hope for a speedy recovery. I'm sure it was devastating, but again, this was her. She has, Lord willing, she has all the time in the world to heal. She ain't doing this no more. But I understand her decision completely. You don't get a lot of these opportunities, and she is a one, two, three. She's a I think she's just a one-time gold medalist in in the Olympics, but she's won a bunch of, or she's won 4 World Cups. In fact, let me make sure that's true. Yeah, she has 1 Olympic gold and 2 bronze. Of course, she's gonna try to go out there, man. Especially if she knows that this is her last one. So I do hope for a speedy recovery, but I understand completely. People who say that, well, that's why is Jason Tatum out there playing when he know he has a hamstring injury? Because he understands that the Celtics have a chance to win a championship. Something that's what everyone's trying to reach. I wish for a speedy recovery for Lindsey Vonn, but I understand completely why you played or ski through an ACL tear. So there you have it. That's been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I truly, truly, truly appreciate you guys. If you want a Popular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve joggers, the link is in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm trying to get as many subscribers as possible. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to subscribe. It definitely means a lot. Uh, Also for the DSPs, Apple Podcast, Spotify, SoundCloud. Please, please, please follow. Please, please, please subscribe. Rate, comment, share. I'm trying to reach as many subscribers as possible. I'm trying to grow the podcast unilaterally. I cannot do it without you guys' help. So please tell a friend to subscribe, follow, all that. It means a lot. Also, for my socials, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, please follow. I post pretty much daily, whether that's reels, whether that's shorts, um, whether that's stories. I post pretty much daily. I don't mind going back and forth. I don't mind debating in the comments. Just keep it respectful, and I'll go. It just means that you're listening to me and you have an opinion, both of which are important. But again, keep it respectful, please. And I don't mind going back and forth. Also, don't leave a comment and not follow. Like, what are we doing? Um, until next time, much love.